I started getting dumber and dumber as I layered on the layers and never was truly sober, or clean at any given point, and it just piled up.
I'm a former Detroit police officer and rode with the 1%er motorcycle club. During that time, I was involved in a lot of altercations. I had a gun shoved in my face. The trigger was pulled, and I got a plate under my left eye. I'm Manny Vitale, and this is my story. I'm Manny Vitale, host of My Fight, Our War, and we are our second home in Connecticut with the amazing family, with Ian Bick, our incredible producer, Matt Cronin, and the rest of the amazing family here. And as always, we have some incredible guests coming on, sharing their stories. And we have the same today. And we are very blessed, very fortunate to have someone who is going to come on, tell their story of what their life's like with addiction, what their life's going through it, and then in recovery. And that person is Barry Smith. So, Barry, thank you for coming on with us.
Thanks for having me, Manny.
Oh, my pleasure. And we've had some people that we know in common on here, so that have been awesome. But you know what, Barry? You know what? Let's get started with, why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're from, and a little bit about Barry.
Sure. So I'm Barry. I live in Danbury, Connecticut. I am a member of recovery. I've had a long recovery, and my recovery is actually twice as long as my running years. I got clean and sober when I was 22, and I have been for about 11 years. It'll be 11 years next month.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely a privilege and a blessing. A lot of my hobbies are in the digital world. It's really cool to be a part of a show like this. I've never done that before, but I always wondered what it would be like to do so. My setup at home it has a lot of elements of this studio, so it's cool to see that I was on track. I'm an amateur software developer. I play video games pretty much religiously, but whatever to stay sober, right?
Hey.
I've been involved in recovery more than I could say I did anything else. I wish I could say like I do this for a career, I do that for a career, and I always compared myself to others, right? And it got to the point where like I was like 25, right? I'd been clean and sober for 3 years or so. I just started really getting the life back on track, and I'm sitting on Facebook, doom scrolling, and I'm scrolling, and everybody I graduated high school with, this is an old Facebook back in the day. I've long since gotten rid of it for this reason, but I'm scrolling, and the people I graduated with were either getting their masters in a career field, or getting married, or having children, and I'm sitting there going, what would I do?
You kind of see yourself,
like, what have I done?
Like that comparing yourself.
Yeah. And that really toxic, comparison of social media and like where I'm at in my life, it had a huge detriment on my mental health. And I was just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I got rid of that. I stopped comparing myself to others and just kind of went with the flow of life.
That's where we're, with the, of course, social media, man, either it could be a love-hate thing, and it could be a good thing or a terrible thing, depending on how it's utilized. How was things in the earlier years, so the early memories of Barry, how was life growing up with childhood for you?
Well, if I'm going to dive into the earliest memory, and a lot of these were repressed memories when I was, when I was active, and then after I had, turned my life around, really. And until recently, when I've been working with a professional, which I highly encourage to anybody who's battling the battle, like it's really important to have a professional around, even if it's just to talk to, even if, you don't really know what to say and you go in, anything to help process what's going on. And it took years to find a professional that works for me. And they're actually right here in this area, and I go see them twice a week. And with this person, we've been breaking down experiences in my life, and I've been able to dig up things that I've repressed. And that earliest memory that you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
or like that I'm talking about, is um, I'm sitting in a playpen in front of the fireplace in the living room of my house. I was in a small house growing up. You know, it was it was a nice house. I had a great family. My parents were they worked very, very hard. You know, I would say I've been told, you know, like when I was born or like right around that time, they were getting their first household and all that kind of stuff. And we were somewhere in the upper lower class by the time we established ourselves as a family household. Nowadays, it's, you know, my parents have worked so hard that they've risen in the caste system very, very much. But on the outside looking in, we were perceived as a lower caste.
Mm.
And I experienced some discrimination for that. I grew up in Newtown, Connecticut, and the town itself is a lovely place, beautiful, beautiful place. Very, very engaged in its history. Very, very great education system. If I'm being totally honest, I had a wonderful time. I wouldn't trade, you know, my public school experience for anything. And we, but you know, every once in a while, we'd be treated a little differently because we were perceived as poor when we weren't, and it was very, very interesting to reflect on. You know, and I
But that's
still
so
reflect on it a
because
lot.
for you and the inner workings of the family,
Hmm.
you know, it sounds like a very loving, caring family
Oh
where,
God,
you know, the outside world didn't affect you until you go in and
yeah,
you're, you know, with these other kids, and you know, kids can be little shits.
yeah, yeah, and trust me, I was, I was a little, I was awful. I take full responsibility for turning both my parents' hair gray. Um, you know, like I can only imagine what it was like when, you know, I was active and running, and that phone would, like my mom's cell phone would ring on her dresser
Mm.
in the middle of the night. And it's me just calling, hey, could you open the garage? I lost my clicker, you know? Or I lost my key, you know?
But it'd be that
But like that,
it's
that
Barry.
phone call alone before the answer, that stress, that
Uh,
anxiety, I can only imagine how quickly, you know, the hair follicles were like, we're going gray.
oh my
Like,
God.
so I was a deviant, and I was a little monster, and I was very selfish. And you know, going back to what you're asking, what childhood was like, the first moment of selfishness, that me and that playpen right in front of that fire, and my mom. Well, I wasn't in front of the fire; wasn't active. But I was in front of the
Uh,
fireplace, and the next room was the kitchen, and I could every once in a while I see my mom walk to the table. You know, she'd make a face at me or something. Somebody was over. She was engaged in company, and I think she was baking. I can't quite remember all the details. I don't know who was there or whatever, but I remember at one point she came into the living room and just lighting up, you know, and just being so thrilled for her attention in that moment. And like, this is my earliest memory. I don't know how old I was. I don't know. I was in a playpen, so it must have been
it's a
like
great memory,
2.
man.
Yeah. It took years to dig this thing up, you know, and find that moment. But like, it's so interesting because like, yes, it's a wonderful memory. I have my mother in my life. I'm happy to see my mother, but then it's also the first couple moments of my disease because I wanted her attention more than anything.
Oh, so it
And
was
I
all the
wanted,
time.
it was my attention. You know, I wanted it. And I fought for it for many years. And now I'm dual diagnosed, right? I have addiction and alcoholism in my story. Um, but um, a lot of that is a ripple effect of depression.
Mhm.
I was diagnosed with chronic depression when I was 13 or 12 or 13 years old. I had to go see a therapist through school because I got in a lot of trouble. And he sat down with me for 15 minutes and told my father, it's like, yep, he has chronic depression. He's going to have it all his life. And it's a really serious thing. And obviously, me and my dad looked at each other and said, "What do you know? You know, what do you
Yeah,
know?" It's like
15
15
minutes.
minutes, 15 minutes. Turns out, probably one of the most professional and like very well versed people in the field that I've ever met. Because as time has gone on, he has not been wrong.
So you've been spot on.
Yep, and obviously, I never saw him again or did anything like that. I can't even totally remember his name. Unfortunately, I'm sure he's retired by now, but it was such a weird thing, you know, and I carried that diagnosis with me through my teen years, and you know, I got in a little bit more trouble later on, once alcoholism took over, but I didn't even really know why I started drinking heavily, like
Do you
it
think
was
hearing
progressive.
him say that to you at a young age, this is, you've got severe depression, this is serious.
Mhm.
Do you think that, well, wait a minute, I've got this, maybe gave me a free pass to be an ass, Or I'm just wondering, if hearing that, because then you said, you started to slowly, get into the, how old were you just said about the alcohol and,
My first warm feeling.
mhm,
I was 14 years old.
mhm.
My first sip, I was like 8. So my dad was like, he has a beer regularly, and of course around the house, I'm wondering why he's only having a beer. As an 8-year-old, I have a choice between juice boxes and soda and all these different flavors and all these different things and all these different effects. It's like, why that one? I take a sip and I had more questions because it was awful. It was gross. I could not stand it. I thought I was never going to drink it. I was like, why do you do this? Like, just have a soda. Like, what are you doing? And I was repulsed, and my first warm feeling, it was Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Mhm.
I was 14 years old. A new girl had just moved to town, and a mutual friend of ours was trying to get a few of her friends together to group, like have a welcoming party and make her feel welcome and give her a friend group and all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool. And the mom wanted to be a cool mom, and she got 2 6-packs of Mike's Hard. There were 6 of us, and she said, "You guys have one, I get the other." And like, okay, cool. Now, I wish I knew what I knew now then. I probably would have had a much different trajectory if I did, because I wasn't even halfway done with my first one when I was counting the number of people who were actually having one and thinking about my second drink. And that is the red flag.
This was 14 years old with the
14
red
years
with the
old.
hard lemonade.
14 years old, the drink was tasty. It wasn't the
Uh-huh.
same effect as the beer. And for some reason, I was already thinking about how I was going to convince the mother to give me another one by the time I was halfway through my first one.
Oh.
And that's, in hindsight, unbelievable. In the moment, I was just like, whatever, like, this is cool. I want to be cooler, And, the girl moved to town. I had a great conversation with her. My charisma was through the roof, and I felt very engaged. And like, I was just like, I want to be able to do that all the time, because without it, up until this moment, I was so anxious. I was so nervous. I didn't even know how to say hi
Very
to somebody
quiet.
properly. Yeah, I still struggle with this today. Sometimes I'll forget somebody's name or something like that and not know how to greet them. So I'll just be like, "Hey," and then walk by. And it's really tough. It's really tough sometimes with the level of social anxiety, as we call it today. And that's it. It took that away. That first drink, that second drink, I probably got, I think I got 3 that night.
Liquid courage.
Yeah, I think I got 3 because 5 of us drank. So there was one extra. I got that one, and then I got one of the moms later on. And I got in the car, and I had that warm feeling, and I felt like I could take on the world, and everything was okay, and I was relaxed for the first time in my entire life. And you know what? If that moment didn't happen, I would have never known I wasn't relaxed. It was just a new tier of relaxation, and it was awesome. So whenever my friends said, "Hey, let's get together and get something to drink," it became a thing. Now, my disease was really progressive, like I was 14 years old. I probably didn't feel that feeling again until I was like 16 and driving, you know. We would get together once in a blue moon and actually have access to something to drink, and my friends were really into pot. Like right around the time I was having my first drink, they were having their first smoke. And something about the pot, man, like I watched them all do it and act stupid. And I was just like, no, not for me. Not for me, man. Not for me. I can't do that, and like after thinking about it more and more, I'm like, I would always tell them, it's like, nah, dude, I can't do it because I'm going to like it too much. That's what I told them, And I had
Which at
no
that
idea.
age, really, they're like, what? That makes no sense.
Oh, yeah. I was not invited to many smoking occasions,
See, with
like,
that, I with my friends, same thing. I was beer, the stimulants, the Coke, and all that. But with the weed, I watched my friends. It was 2 things. I I'd smoke it, and I'd either laugh hysterically or just fall asleep. And I'd be like at a party. Oh,
Oh
this is
God.
fun.
God, I wish I could. That's what it did to me when I finally let it in. But
So you said,
it was such
not
a
for me, huh?
yeah, not for me. It was such an interesting thing to be the black sheep among the black sheep. Like I was hanging out with the crowd of people who wanted to get messed up. I was hanging out around the crowd of people who were, not very good with authority, didn't really, care about what anybody said. We're drawing A's with a circle on their binders and stuff in school,
The
like,
only rules were your rules.
yeah, really, really rebellious crowd, cigarette smokers, the whole nine. And, as a kid, he was like watching this and being a part of it. It was like we did a lot of things that we could have gotten in a lot of trouble for. And for them to be like, oh, no, you're lame because you don't smoke, that felt weird because I didn't really have anywhere else to go. Like I didn't really have any other crowds. And I'm talking like middle school now and stuff like that. Middle school, early high school.
Like 8th, 9th grade, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So my depression's progressive, right? So right around 8th, 9th grade, I stop. I get in a lot of trouble in 8th grade. I get the diagnosis. And actually, now that you mention it, it probably did have a little bit of effect on how I behaved. Because starting in high school, I started basically being truant. I was a truant student who didn't get caught doing it or didn't get reported doing it. I don't know. But I did not attend a lot of classes. I barely scathed by in my high school year. When I was there, I had my friend circle. In my sophomore year, I had a situation happen. I'm not going to go into too much detail with it, but it made me a pariah among that initial group. So I went into an after-school program my junior year. I took classes in that. I had to have a job. So I got my first job working at Dunkin' Donuts, and finally getting a paycheck. I'd finally gotten my car. And that's when I'm like, I had this friend. His name was Joe. He was my best friend in high school. He was the one who stuck with me through all that stuff and all that jazz. I had a few others that came back around after I came back from that after school program in my senior year, but he was expelled at the time, so we would hang out during the day. I'd drop him off at a tutor, and then I'd go to class, and then I'd pick him up, and we'd hang out more, play video games and talk. And he had this one thing. He said, Barry, how do we make $1 million right now? How do we make $1 million right now? And I always remember that because it's such, I don't know, it was so impactful, like when we were 16, 17.
I was going to say, at that age.
Yeah, but like he was already thinking about trying to retire and do whatever he wants and not have to worry about the stress of life. And we're not even adults yet, and I'm sitting there agreeing with him. And you know what I started doing? Started selling weed.
Entrepreneur.
Yeah. He knew a guy. I had the money, and sure enough, I did that until I couldn't do it anymore. And I almost got in trouble. I almost got in a lot of trouble for that. And the irony is, I got in trouble for drinking, not slinging. I will circle back to that, but now I'm a chameleon. My social life the social life I remember as a high school student, a middle school student, is I'm a chameleon. I could go up to any social circle and act like I've known them my whole life, including the ones that I revered as my closer friends in my earlier years. The result of this was I didn't have any close friends, and I was completely alone, and I was doing anything for people to like me. And I had what they wanted, which sustained that entire existence. And it's really, we all make weird decisions when we're children, and I don't think I'd change any of it. I really started to spiral when I was 21. I had a high school romance, that's the phrase. And I put them on the biggest pillar in the world, like they were my rock. They were the only thing consistent in my life. If everything else blew up, at least I had that, because it was the only thing I felt like I was doing right. And I wasn't. I did I messed that up. I've really messed that up, being an egomaniac, an attention seeker. All these things that have persisted through everything. I started smoking weed when I was 18. Actually, if March 23rd, 2010. That was the day I smoked weed for the first time. I wrote it down. I remembered it. I remember it because I turned 18 on the 4th, and I was back and forth for like 2-3 weeks, and we were in the woods at a park, and they had this pipe that looked like something else, and then they could transform it like a transformer. Stupid. And I ate more pasta that night than I've ever had before.
The old munchies.
Yeah. And I had like a Tootsie Pop or something like that, and it just tasted so much better than any of the others I ever had. But I didn't like get the out of my mind stupid feeling, I came much later, where I started getting dumber and dumber as I layered on the layers and never was truly sober, or clean at any given point, and it just piled up. By the time I got in trouble, I'll come back to that. The high school romance ended a few days before my birthday, when I was 20, turned 21. And like I said, this was my pillar, this was my rock, this was the only thing tethering me to reality, Like at one point she said, if you go to prison, I'm gone. And that actually created the trajectory of what I worked with. Because I made rules, like nothing that hurts people, it has to grow out of the ground, like that kind of stuff, to avoid the lethality, or like the lethal ones, and keep myself off the radar, and everybody who does that kind of shit thinks they're the smartest person in the fucking world.
Yeah. They got caught because they're not as smart as me. I'm a genius.
Right? Like I'm on this. Like I know exactly what's going on, where everybody is, no, I got lucky,
So this whole time, man, is alcohol constant in your life this whole
Alcohol
time?
is progressive. So when I started slinging when I was 15, I started selling to people between the ages of, between my age at the time and like 25. So whenever we had a social gathering amongst my friends, whenever somebody would pick up from me for who was over 21, I'd be like, instead of giving me cash, you want to give me a bottle? I'll trade you its worth, maybe a little more. And it was always an exchange. So I never really had to go out of my way. I had what they wanted. They had what I wanted. Very easy business transaction. And I always had it when I needed it. But I didn't need it at the time. It was progressive. I would get my friends some stuff, it would be another business transaction or something like that. And it was just, I didn't think about it, and once in a while we would have a party. First it was on once a month. Then it was we'd get together on a Saturday. Then it was Saturday afternoons, and we'd start then, and then we added in Friday nights as we got older in high school, and more parties started. And then we would that's what they did. All the way up until college. They were Friday, Saturday nights, very rarely any other night, unless it was a very special occasion, like somebody's birthday or something like that. But me, I started including Sundays in there, and Thursdays. I had that 4-day college weekend, basically, without actually being in college yet,
Any day ends in a Y,
Then, any day that ends in a Y is where it took the turn, And at first, it was just like, a glass, of whiskey, on a Monday night, end of the day kind of thing. Because this is what I learned growing up, watching television. I remember this scene. My parents watched the show Rescue Me, and we had one TV, so I'm watching what they're watching, right? And Rescue Me's on. Dennis Leary, post 9/11. He's a firefighter. A great show. Definitely not kosher for today's media era. But there's this one scene at the end of an episode where he sees his cousin. His cousin's basically haunting him, and he's having this really stressful moment. And you know how he deals with it? He walks into a bar, breaks his sobriety, and drinks an entire 12-ounce glass of whiskey. And that's how he dealt with the stress. And like this is a rip, like this is how I associated alcohol in my life. Whenever I was stressed, whenever I was feeling a little too overburdened, whenever something was going just a little wrong and I needed to calm the hell down, that was a perfect excuse to drink. And that's how every day with a Y became a regular thing, because I was always stressed. I was always uncomfortable.
Was it beer or whiskey or liquor, both?
I mean,
Whatever was available.
when I was a teenager, it was Morgan's, Captain Morgan's. And one night we were at a party. That party was lasting like a week long. And one of those nights I was out behind the shed in the backyard, puking my brains out. And I could never even look at the bottle without like getting
Smell
that
it.
shiver. Yeah, like, oh. So I switched to Jack Daniels.
I hear you.
And I drank that until I didn't anymore. Until I stopped. But it was progressive. And honestly, it didn't matter if it was Jack Daniels or vodka or tequila. It didn't matter what it was. If it was there and it was being offered, I didn't even care about the order anymore. Like, it's that alcohol content that mattered. I mean, I'll admit I always needed a mixer with something like grain or Dubra, but like, it didn't really matter what the quality was or what kind of alcohol it was. It was about getting messed up.
No, you get to the point where some people would say, "Well, what was your drink of choice?" And mine was whatever I opened. I mean,
Yeah.
At first it'd be like, "Give me a Bud Light and a shot of Jack."
Yeah.
Towards the end there, as I was trying to open the bottle with the shakes, it was Red Stag, it was Tito's, it was Crown Royal, it was gin.
Yeah.
It was just whatever. So I get what you're saying.
My last beer was Sam Adams. It was my last drink. It was my dad's. So the girl leaves at 21, like right as I turned 21. I'm now a legal drinker. My tether to reality is gone, and I lose my mind. Anytime I had a feeling, I would get out of my mind. I would smoke a bunch of pot, or drink a bunch of booze or go to a party and just trying to forget about life for a while. So I've never built any skills on how to deal with this heartbreak. And I've never been so emotionally distraught in my life.
Were you guys together a while?
I think it was
at 21, I mean,
it was like 4 years or something like that.
Okay.
Going on 4 at that time. I can't really remember.
and right before your birthday too.
Yeah. And we hurt each other pretty bad. And I think that's all I'm going to say about that.
Hey, no problem.
But it started the spiral, and there were some interactions in that spiral that she was a part of, but I initiated them, and I was basically asking for the pain. But I turned 21, she leaves. I tell all my clients, because at this point I have like 5 clients, and we're moving a little bit more than just, a baggie here, baggie there. And I tell them all I'm going away for a week. I go south to, I don't even know where I'm going by the time I get my car, and I end up in West Virginia, sleeping on a friend's couch, trying to get away, and St. Patty's Day is right around the corner. Then I go to Virginia, college town, and sleep on another friend's couch, and I go back and forth between these places like 2 times, 3 times. I'm in for St. Patty's Day, I'm back in West Virginia, West Virginia State, partying with the whole college, and just being wild. And I told everybody I was going to be gone for a week. I was no call, no show for almost an entire month. I didn't tell my parents where I was going. I didn't tell my clients where I was going. I didn't tell my friends where I was going or what I was doing. It was all just word of mouth, like what was going on. And I just cut loose. And getting away was kind of all right, but I was trying to geographically change everything about me. Like I wanted to stop feeling it. I thought getting away would give me time to process it. Of course, I drank and I smoked, like more than ever, and I didn't have time to process anything with that. But I was just looking to change everything up, and it didn't work out. I came home. I try to get back on everything, but I'm slowly losing my mind. I'm slowly losing my stability. I'm slowly like I don't have anything I care about anymore. You know, even the money, it doesn't matter. And
How's things with my dad right now, as far as relationship wise? Are
they're
they
living.
aware of everything that's happening with you,
Uh,
as far as with the substance abuse?
as far as substance abuse goes, yeah, yeah. I remember. I remember I was going to the dentist one day. My mom was giving me a ride. I forgot why I wasn't driving myself, and she goes, like, we're just around the corner from the house. I don't think she could even hold back. Like, Barry, are you smoking weed? And
Just
I'm
out of nowhere, she's
like, are you smoking pot? And I'm like, yeah, because like I got a capacity for energy, and lying to my mother was just not something I wanted to keep up. And like that lie would have been impossible to keep up. I had a safe in my dresser with with a pound of fucking weed in it. Like like the whole house smelled like she just wanted my confirmation. She knew.
we're gonna cut this right here.
Yeah. So she's like, "Are you smoking weed?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "Man, I at least thought you'd be smart enough to sell it." And I was so taken aback by it. But she got me, dude, because I looked at her. And I was like, "Yeah,
Man, she got you.
She played my ego against me, and I admitted that I was selling it right to her
good.
out of her house. She was
That
brilliant,
is good, man.
brilliant play on me. I was in the car with her. Like there was no escaping the question. I wasn't gonna lie. I didn't lie about smoking it, and I was like, "Yeah, you got me."
That is, I have not heard that before. I thought you'd be smart enough to sell it.
And she and my arrogance had to say yeah, and she knew me that well. And
man,
like my mom and dad love me very much, and it took a lot of years for me to stop being a little shit and love them back. Through my entire teenage years, I was a little rebel. I was always yelling at them. You'd knock on my door, you didn't know if I was going to snap at you or not respond or be actually okay to have a conversation with. And it got to the point where they just wouldn't interact with me because I pushed them away.
What happened after the conversation? Yeah.
Honestly, she was like, I knew it. It's like, you can't do that, right? At the time, my father, he's a scientist, and he was working for the federal government. So if I ever got caught, he'd be fucked.
Oh,
and that was the risk I was running, and that's when I learned that. That's when she explained that to me that day, and I understood the importance and stuff like that. But you see, the interesting thing about my parents is, once I got sober, right, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but once I got sober, my mom and my father came to my 1-year anniversary. There was a gathering, and I was celebrating with somebody else who had 1 year, and their mother shared about the phase where they threw him out of the house. And my mother didn't say anything that night, I don't recall. But afterwards, she pulled me aside and asked me about that share. None of the other shares in the meeting, just the other mother that was there. And she was like, how could they do that? How could they throw somebody out? Like their child. Like I never would have been able to do that to you. Like through everything. And it explains so much because there was so much shit that I should have been tossed for, especially the safety of my father's career.
Yes.
Like there was so much stuff I had done to hurt them selfishly for my own gain, and I was doing all that pain and trauma of me being a delinquent distributor, all the people I put at risk, it was all for just $1, So she had no idea how a mother could throw out her son. And it really put it into perspective for me is like, if I didn't reach the rock bottom that I reached the way I reached it, where I had to decide like, hey, something's got to give, something's got to change. There was a threshold with her where the enabling never would have ended. And that's okay. You know, to me, that's love. A parent in that situation is very difficult, and it's really like I can't imagine how she was navigating it. You know, like I said, I turned every hair on her head gray. Um, but she said that to me, and I was just blown away. I was blown away. Because it really summed up in about a sentence how much she loves me, you know, as a kid, and how shitty of a son I was for a long time. And like that's at year one, you know. I'll have 11 years next month. Our relationship is better than it's ever been, but it really put into perspective what I have to do, the action I have to do to change and be different and be a better kid, you know, for her. 'Cause I'll always be her kid. And like that statement that she says, you know, I could never give up on you. You know, and my father agrees, you know, like they both would never give up on me, has rippled through, you know, my 20s and my 30s.
And the
And
thing
so far.
is, just a little bit that I've known you for a whole 45 minutes, but from that time you're caring for other people, now I know where it came from, mom and dad, and
Hmm.
you saying about how could someone give up on them? Because I've had many conversations with people who, the parents that have been in here, like I had to do it. It got to that point, and I remember my dad said, we loved him so much that we had to break our own hearts by
Hmm.
throwing them out.
Yeah.
And it's not that they loved him any less, like than your mom, that statement, but it's just reaching that level of intensity.
Yeah.
And that's just that unconditional love, for your mom and dad. That's awesome. It's
Yeah.
great to hear.
I'm very, very blessed. I'm grateful every day to have that in my life. And have I wasn't taught it with a textbook. I wasn't taught it with somebody just talking to me or taking a class. I was taught it by observing the people who did it for me. And I know not everybody gets that.
Oh,
And if I'm gonna drive home anything, it's like you can create that um, you can create that in your life by being the example of it. You know,
oh man.
so um, I learned very quickly in my program. You know, when I got clean, um, I got clean about a year after that spiral, and that spiral started with a girl. I had a really dark summer. Um, right around August, my friends were just like, "You need to come. You need to come. You need to get away. You need to come to this festival with us." We went to the Gathering of the Juggalos 13th anniversary. We drove across the country for this show, and like I wasn't a super fan or anything like that, you know, but like it was a nice culture shock. It was very strange. It was very different. I was in a totally different element, and it helped me get away mentally. And I got the ticket, or I got the seat in the car of somebody else who was supposed to go. And that person passed away that week with a needle in his arm back home. So we left early, we came home, and we had to do that. And he was a very, very good person. He had a heart of gold. He cared about everybody, struggled with his disease, you know, and he was into the stuff that could take you out. And it did. And it was a real shame. A month later, my grandmother dies, and on my dad's side of the family. And this grandmother, you know, I love her very much. She came down every Friday when I was growing up, and she would be our babysitter on Fridays. And I always have time with her and stuff. And in my later years, you know, I had the car. I was like, I'm gonna come see you. I'm gonna come visit you. I'm gonna come see you. I'm gonna be there for you. And when she passed away, I realized I never came. I told her that for years. I never went to go see her because I either got drunk or high, or I thought it was too far, or something. It turns out she lived 30 minutes away, man. Fucking, I sucked. Like, and this is one of the biggest examples of the guilt and the shame of the alcoholic and addict in my life, because I took full responsibility for that. She had an ulcer, right, and it burst, and she lived alone in her house in Weston, you know, and so it's a middle of nowhere, and took a while for the ambulance to get there. She made it to the phone, called the ambulance, got to the hospital. Doctor's like, first day, it was a Saturday. The doctor's like, she's gonna make a full recovery. She's gonna be fine. You know, she's coming to, she's coming out of it. You know, it's fully mended. Next day, flatline. Saturday, the Sunday, she flatlines in the hospital. We go, we confirm it. I'm devastated. Like, the doctor said she was gonna make a full recovery. Like, what happened? everything failed. And the
Everything.
only explanation I could possibly come up with in my head is that she just let go. You know, she'd been living alone for a long time. You know, her husband passed away when I was a kid, caused a lot of anger issues for me and stuff like that. But she was depressed
And
and
you
alone.
know what, Barry, is when I've talked to parents of people or loved ones of people in recovery, and they don't understand addiction and the power of it. You know, like the best way I try to give my own explanation is, you know, they're like, why don't they love us enough to do that? I go, trust me, it's not to do with that. I go,
Mm-hmm.
think about that. They love you that much. That's the power that addiction has over somebody. That, let's see, I could go see my grandmother, my mom and dad, or I could guzzle this bottle and I'll be fine for a few hours. To make that choice goes to show the extreme evil that addiction is. That
Mm-hmm.
you're going to give up your love, your family, you know, for that moment, and
That's right.
that's how powerful it is. That's
You know, like, yeah, when you mention it, it was like they were parallel and never crossing, except my disease would put spikes in my love for my family. But like, I loved my family. I just didn't know how to be a son. I didn't know how to be a grandson. I didn't know how to be a partner or anything like that. I didn't know how to get out of my own damn way and be there for someone else. Because I refused, because I wanted to do all those things, but I also wanted to have this other thing. One of the defects I came to find, and somebody who was advising me at one point, he's put it the funniest way. He had me write it down on a list. You want your cake and to eat it too. And that's a serious defect of mine, is I want both worlds. I want to be a drug addict. I want to do all that kind of stuff. I want to be an alcoholic, you know, and I want to have all of that escapism and not having responsibility for my emotions or accountability for my actions, you know. I want all that. But I also want a family and everybody I care about, and to not hurt them. And I can't do both. You can't do both. No matter. But that's the interesting thing about addiction and alcoholism, is that disease in the back of your mind, your consciousness, that little voice in your head says, you can do it.
oh yeah.
You got this. You know, and
As
sure
things
enough,
crumble around and you see it and realize it, I got this. You know.
yeah. So my grandmother passes away and I beat the crap out of myself. I take accountability for it, you know, because I deserve that kind of pain and suffering, you know, and that's what my disease was telling me. I deserve that. We leave the hospital that Sunday. This is October. Yeah, this is October of 2012. Yeah. No, 2013. 2013. This is October 2013, and we stop at a deli for lunch, and we're going to the house to clean up, and there's a liquor store over there. I'm like, Mom, give me $20. It wasn't even an ask. I'm going to the liquor store. I need something. And, you know, love of my mother, knowing that I'm struggling, knowing that I deal with a depression and all that kind of stuff, she hands me $20. I go buy a bottle of Jack, you know, $7.50. We are 5 minutes from the house. By the time we pulled into the driveway of the house, I'd drinking half of it. I'm walking around the property, bawling my eyes out, knowing everything about that side of my family's going to change. And I'm just devastated. The next thing I remember, I mean, we did a little cleaning and stuff like that, but by the time we got back in the car to go home, the next thing I remember is it's Friday that week, and I'm coming to in the Wilton Police Department. And I went on a week-long blackout and got my first DUI. So now I'm a shitty grandson, I'm a shitty son, and I'm a fuck up. I'm a huge failure. And like I said earlier, you know, I got arrested for DUI. I did not have a weed charge. How did I do that? The amount of times I was driving around with weight. You know, how did I get away with a misdemeanor of DUI?
DUI.
Ugh, unbelievable. So I'm laughing my ass off in disbelief of this situation, that this is my arrest, you know. And I feel like a fuck up. And my dad bails me out the next morning, the wake's that afternoon. And oh no, he bailed me out Friday. The wake's the next morning, but it's Friday morning. He drives me home. It's like 8 a.m. and they're all getting ready for work. My sister's getting ready for school. And the first thing I did when I got into the house is I walked into the basement, and there was a spot above the fridge. I hit a 750 of Jack Daniels for occasions like these.
Oh, yeah. For a
8
case
a.m.
of
in the
emergency.
morning. Walk up right in the kitchen, right in front of everybody. Just start fucking pounding 8-ounce glasses of whiskey. And by the time they're leaving the house, I'm bawling my eyes out on the floor of the kitchen. Total fucking puddle of a mess. You know, all my dignity, all my pride, everything just fucking defeated. And I wish that was the end of it. I got a suspended sentence for that in January. All I had to do was be good. All I had to do was not do it again. All I had to do was stay out of trouble. All I had to do was take an alcohol class.
So how long before you did it again?
I think it was March. My birthday rolls around. I'm a good boy, you know, all the way up until March. So I got sentenced in December, January. March rolls around. I'm a good kid. You know, I'm trying to be mindful. I'm trying to rest before I drive. You know, that kind of stuff. Eat something before I drive. You know I'm driving and I'm just trying to be mindful. My best friend kills himself, and Joe, he killed himself. And I'm actually the one not drinking over this one. You know, I was not the drunkest person in that party. You know, we celebrated his life several times, and I don't know why I didn't get hammered. You know, and about a month later, I'm at a party. It has nothing to do with Joe, and I drove a few people there. They all got rides home. You know, I do the 3-hour nap thing, and I have some breakfast, and then I go home. And I clip somebody on my way home with my side mirror on their taillight. And one of the people I drove to the party the night before left an empty beer in my backseat. And I'm going to tell you, the guy got out of the car that I clipped. He was so mad he couldn't get a word in. He was talking a mile a minute. Like, I know that kind of behavior. He was on something too. But he got let go because they saw the can. Got my second DUI. Lawyer said don't blow. Instant conviction. I tried for my first offense twice because they were in two different courts and I was on a suspended sentence. I got very lucky. And I still got a couple days in jail, and trust me, the scary straight method works. Mm-hmm. It does. I got that. I was introduced to programs and 12 steps and all that kind of stuff right after. Because two, I'm like, hey, yeah, something's wrong. I should check something out.
Here.
Yeah, and then I go and I sit around a bunch of people just like me. And at the time, I didn't feel like they were just like me because they were telling stories and I could relate to some of them and it made sense and like I understood. And I had never heard any of my friends tell stories like that, you know. So like I kind of related to all these people, but they were laughing and having a good time and smiling and being a part of each other's lives, all this stuff. I'm sitting in the back row, shaking, bawling my eyes out. I must have raised my hand like 4 times, you know, around those people, and I didn't know, you know, I didn't know up from down, and I didn't think I belonged there. And I related, but I didn't think I belonged there. And I did that for about a month. I met some people my age. They included me in a lot of things. About halfway through that month, I started marijuana maintenance, started smoking weed again. So it didn't last long. The sentencing for the second DUI was probation. They're like, you got to sober up. You know, God bless my probation officer. He was very patient with me at the time. And I really needed that because but it did get to the point where it's like, you're doing something or I'm violating you. And it happened to coincide with the spiritual awakening I had because at the end of that first month, I was back to the races. I was in Lake City. I was lying to my friends who was driving the car. You know, they drove my car, and I was lying to them so bad, and the driver had to get home to be at his brother's Little League game. You know, like he's not going to miss out on family for me. You know, but here I am. It's like at one point on the phone, like when he's like, "Where the fuck are you, dude? You know, I'm off the strip at a little bar somewhere, you know, with an open tab, drinking entire pitchers to my face. And he's like, where the fuck are you? I was like, I'm on my way back to the car. He's like, dude, if you're not back soon, I'm leaving without you. I was like, if you leave without me, I'll call the cops and report my car stolen. You know, like just to really drive that home. And like, that's a shitty friend, dude. I was a very shitty friend. Because it was all about me. It was all about me getting buzzed. You know, it was all about me getting fucked up. I mean, we're talking like 9 o'clock in the morning, dude.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if you're ever driving away from Lake City, but you got that like sharp right turn and then you get on the interstate. I remember the turn and then I woke up in my driveway. You know, but he barged into that bar and pulled me the fuck out of there. You know, he closed my tab on me, and like the whole bar was like, what the fuck? You know, it wasn't the nicest place to be, you know, and like the whole bar was like, what the fuck? But they didn't mess with them. You know, they just knew I was out of place. I was out of there. So I went on a bender for that summer. I'm told, I only remember the last one, and it was a spiritual experience for me, and it helped me open my mind to a higher power of my understanding. But I'm told I almost died 9 times, and I was drinking to die.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I was getting fucked up, getting behind the wheel, you know, doing all that kind of stuff, trying to die, and eventually I couldn't get behind the wheel anymore because license and all that stuff. Nobody would give me the keys, and I'd walk everywhere. I'd walk to the bar, you know, Newtown. A lot of distance between your house and the center of town where everything was actually open, you know. I walked to bars, I'd walk to package stores, I'd walk back, you know, and the arrogance, the ego. I thought I was in the best shape of my life.
Oh, yeah, man.
I wasn't eating.
Any bar. There's no bar too far.
There's no bar too far, you know. I was skinny as hell, you know. I thought I was in good shape. No, dude, I just wasn't eating, and I was walking everywhere because I had an addiction problem, you know. And I was so decrepit. So one night I'm coming home. I'm at the bar. A group of people who knew me or knew of me. They knew I was going through some shit. They felt really bad, and they included me in a birthday party or something like that. Down the road, opposite direction from my house, and they're responsible people. You know, volunteer firefighters, very respectable human beings back then, and probably still now. I lost touch with all of them. I didn't even really know them that well to begin with, but they felt bad and they brought me along and they knew of me and all that stuff, and they didn't really want anything from me. They just wanted to, you know, comfort me a little bit. So they all go to sleep by like 9 o'clock. They got work tomorrow, you know, that kind of shit. And I drank all of their booze and walked home in the middle of the night. And I slipped on a patch of grass about a quarter mile down the road and busted my face open on the pavement. And it was dark when that happened. And when I came to, the sun was coming up. I'm wearing all beige. And, you know, I'd blend in with the environment at that point. And something happened, man. I never have I ever, at this point, woken up and immediately got up. The depression always felt like 1,000 pounds on my back. But in that situation, I jumped up. And before I could even brush myself off, car comes whipping around the corner, you know, goes right through the puddle of blood my broken nose left, right where my head was. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Yep.
And like I say that to the puddle of blood, and then I start yelling at the sky. How fucking dare you? You know? Like, why won't you let me die? You know? That was it. 20 seconds. 20 seconds of hesitation. But no. The one time I get up, how dare you? And I start talking to a higher power. And that I don't know. I don't understand anything about it. But I start yelling at the sky because I got nothing else to complain to. And there's nothing else that could have gotten me off that ground.
Exactly.
And then, like, I had a bust up face, nose was broken, everything like that. I ended up at the hospital. My dad took me over there. He picked me up. Oh my God, the poor diner people. I walked to the center of Sandy Hook because that's where I was. And I walked into this little diner and I had blood all over my face and my nose. Like, can I use your phone?
You what, sir?
They let me use their phone. My dad picked me up from around back of that place, and and they took me right to the hospital, and the person who did my x-ray, she was kind of hinting at, a program or something like that, or like these experiences, it doesn't have to be this way no more. Sure enough, I ran into them later on, and they were like my first little impression of that.
I tell you,
Yeah, it was weird.
sometimes life's direction, it's like these moments, something like that is really what's that first eye opener. And like right now, everything that you've gone through is so intense as far as what addiction does to you and the ups, downs, good, bad, and all that other stuff. Because we're going to be winding things down now, but you are in such a good place now.
Mm.
And, as far as the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I really want to touch a lot more on that. It's easy to get into the whole
So we're
history
gonna
of
we're
everything.
gonna do another because like I said, we're gonna have to wind this up now.
So that moment where I was yelling at the sky and stuff like that, like I had a busted up face. I had no energy. I was completely done. I laid in bed for 2 days because I didn't even want to go to the bar and lie to somebody about what happened to my face. My best lie about what happened to my face was I got jumped. Like, instead of passing out on the way home, it's like I got jumped for something that I never did. Like that was my best lie that I could come up with. I was like, I can't even do that. So I lay in bed for 2 days, and then by the end of the 2 days, I had my first moment of clarity in probably an entire year, maybe a year and a half. And I'm like, maybe all these people telling me I have a problem are right, and I'm wrong. By this point, I'm in IOP. I have counselors. I have the probation officer. My parents are yelling at me. I even asked them, that weekend, can you go get me a bottle? And they're like, fuck no, get your own. They're like, they're not doing anything for my disease, either.
Yeah.
They weren't entirely. They had boundaries and they fucking enforced them. So I'm having this problem, and I go in on Monday for my IOP, and I look at my 2 counselors. They see me walk in. I don't say a damn word. They don't call on me for anything. They know. And I go up to them afterwards, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I think you guys are right. Will you help me? The most important thing I ever did for my recovery. They gave me a phone number of a professional that, there's a facility in Danbury. It's a transitional house between, if you go to detox and you're waiting for a bed on rehab, you go there. They give me that number. And I called him. And I called him. And I called him. And finally I got him on the phone. He's like, we'll have a bed on this day. I had a problem with my insurance. My insurance at the time didn't view rehab or detox as mental health issues, so they didn't cover it. But they would cover outpatient. And the way this facility operated is that they would drive you to an IOP. So on paper it was outpatient, but as far as my probation was concerned, I was living at this place, and I had a bed there, and it was strict. It was strict, It was. You're up at 5:45. You're doing chores. You're washing your dishes. God forbid you forget to clean a fucking fork. Pack your bags. And the first night, I'm like, I don't know how long I'm gonna make it. He got me a bed there. I have my last drink, September 11th, 2014. It's one beer. One beer. I have it with my dad for all the times that we're not going to have a beer. My sister gets married, all this stuff, everything I could think of just to get a beer out of him. So he unlocks the fridge, which he put a lock on because I was breaking into it. I didn't have the energy to break into it anymore, but he gives me one. I drink it. He finishes his. I panic. I have an anxiety attack because I don't know where I'm going to get my next one. Rehab or getting better was out the window, and I called everybody in my phone book. Nobody, either they didn't answer, they told me to go fuck myself, or they told me I needed help, and hung up the phone. And I was completely alone. And I had a big phone book, being, what I did in the past. And for that to happen, I was blown away. So I'm in this treatment facility. The first day, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. The second night, they took us to outside meetings, and I'm sitting in one of them, and I hear somebody share a story. She had lost 3 of her 5 children to this disease while she was in recovery, and she didn't have to drink over it. I'm sitting there going, oh, fuck. Like, I have nothing to drink over if she's not going to drink over that. Like, It changed everything for me. It changed that moment. That moment where I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to last, to what do I got to do to stay? they said, find somebody to teach you, how to be sober. So I found that person. And they could take me to their meetings, and I found a community. And I found a community. I found people my age. I found all kinds of things. And you know what? I just existed for the first 2 years. I didn't do anything to change. I was just around. And the most important thing about that person who was teaching me the first one, he taught me how to have fun. I thought my life was over at 22 years old, not being able to drink.
Yeah.
I thought parties didn't matter anymore. There was no gatherings. Like every ounce of fun that ever existed was associated with drinking and drugging. So I thought it was over, but this person invited me out. There were a bunch of people my age. We were all having fun. There was no silo cups in anybody's hands, or silo, but the red cup.
Yeah.
I always mispronounce that, but there was no red cups in anybody's hands. Nobody had a blunt, and we were playing pool, we were playing video games, we were watching movies, we were hanging out until 1 a.m, and I was going home and I was still sober. It was freaking awesome. And the person who taught him everything, he was in a band. I think they're still around, but I followed this band around for a while. But he said, Barry, you should come. I have like 90 days sober. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to come see your band. Where are you playing? He's like, this bar down the road. And it happened to be my bar away from my bar, I was like, oh, I don't know if I can go there. He's like, Barry, we say it's people, places, and things, right? But what we fail to mention is that it's the feelings we had when we were around those people, places, and things. Grab somebody else from your network, come through, it might surprise you. If you don't like it, leave. I'm like, all right, I will. And I had a really close friend at that time. We went bowling beforehand with a bunch of people, and then we went there, and I walk into this bar, and 60% of it were non-drinkers. That bar sold more Red Bulls that night than beer, and we danced, we partied. I left that bar at like 1:30 in the morning. I had a breathalyzer in my car this time. I'm finally driving again. I blow into it, and I blow 000s, and I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking working.
You should take a picture. I'm telling you.
I mean, I thought about it.
Yeah.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
Trust. I thought about it, and I had that breathalyzer for 3 years, and it really like kind of drove that home. So I put off a lot of the changing as a human being for a couple of years to find out how to have fun. But then I hit an emotional rock bottom that made my alcoholic rock bottom look like child's play. I wanted to die in recovery. I did not feel better. And I would talk to my second person who was teaching me everything that they knew about the program and about, how to be sober and stuff like that. And he's just like, you just got to do this one thing I keep telling you, And that program has steps. Mm-hmm. And I had fallen about 4 down. And I was procrastinating on doing an inventory and looking inwards and understanding what I had done and what I resent and what I'm afraid of, and I was procrastinating every day. And he's just like, you just got to do that thing. Have you started yet? And I'm like, no, I don't got enough time. I'm going to start tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because I never like actually tried it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never did it all the way through, and I never saw everything. I never saw the instructions that this person gave me all the way to the end, and I never really figured out who I was. So if I go into a bar and I say it doesn't work, then what do I fucking know?
Exactly.
Or I can do it all, find out it doesn't work, go back, and then say that for real. But that means I have to do everything they say. I have to fall down the full flight of stairs,
Yep.
Every step. And in that final one, that's where my life kind of changed. I went through 3 advisors by the time I finished all 12 of them. The second one I got through the 4th. I did 5 and 6, and 7. I learned a lot about myself in that situation. I learned all my defects. I learned what my fears were. Because I when I came in, I had a huge problem writing down my fears, because I was like, dude, I'm not even afraid of dying. Like, I'm not afraid of anything. Turns out I'm afraid of everything, and that's why I'm not afraid of death, Like, I'm afraid of literally anything that exists, and it took a long time to get through that and admit it and be honest with myself. And then I switched sponsors after a bit of an argument. I found somebody like that. The second one taught me accountability. I wanted him to teach me punctuality, being on time, you know, how to master my sleep cycle and stuff like that. The third one, he was very spiritually engaged, and he had a connection with a higher power that I couldn't fathom, and I really felt like I needed that, and I wanted to learn it. I feel like that was the one thing I was missing in my program, and I did another 4, 5, and 6, and 7 with him, and I followed through with the rest of it. I did 8 and 9. I started making amends. I learned that I could tell you I'm sorry all I want.
Oh, yeah.
I abused the crap out of that word. Sorry doesn't matter. I was actually taught not to use the word sorry, but instead address everything I had. So I taking accountability. I could do that all I want, but the action is what mattered most. The action, like the walk I walked, is what people are going to see and say, "Oh yeah, he's different."
Oh,
Maybe
yeah,
I
the
can
old
consider
saying,
this,
words are words.
Yeah.
Sex.
But there was also a lot of people on my wrongs list that I couldn't talk to anymore. They were dead.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So I was like, what do you do about that? Because like that shit's keeping me up at night. I can't believe I acted that way. It's like now I got to look in the mirror and see somebody who's going to grow into somebody else who doesn't do that anymore. And a lot of like when you change your actions and your behaviors, people are going to see that before you do.
Definitely.
So I'm beating the crap out of myself while still doing walking the walk, and eventually it took years for me to realize like, oh, I have changed. I could be a little bit more proud of myself. I can be a little less hard on myself. I could be a little different. The depression and all that stuff lingering in, when I got to step 12, like part of the condition of like see it all the way through is I had to give it to one other person. And if I didn't feel better after giving it to one other person, then see ya.
Exactly.
I remember the first day I sat down with this dude. As soon as I was qualified to do it, I found somebody and they asked me to do it. And we sat down. We're both unemployed. And we spent all afternoon reading because that's how I learned. We read. And I was talking to him. I was teaching him stuff. And, man, this changed my life forever. Then we go to one of the gatherings and hang out for an hour and drink some coffee. And then I'm driving him home afterwards because he can't drive, just like I couldn't in the beginning. And I was doing what was done for me. And we're almost at his house and he turns off the music. I'm like, dude, you're all right? And like really hesitantly, he says, yeah, I think I'm going to be okay. I'm like, that's awesome, dude. How do you feel? And he says, I feel pretty good. I look at him and it's like, all right, cool. Well, when you're sitting in my seat, driving one of your people around, and it's going to feel like 1,000 times better.
No, man. When you're able to give everything that you've been getting, and Barry, there's just as we said before we started, there's so much with addiction. There's so much with mental health issues. There's so much with all the things that are involved by themselves. But when you have them combined, I mean, there's way, way more that has to be discussed, and we're going to do that. I was talking to you before about my studio in Detroit that I do live, that I do virtually. We're going to continue that. I'm going to give you that link and have you continue with the with both of them put together, with the mental illness, with the addiction.
Yeah, I would love to talk a little more about the recovery. The thing with the recovery in my experience is that I've been clean and sober twice as long as I was active.
That's just awesome.
It's unbelievable. It's a blessing every single day. Real quick to finish the thought, though.
Sure.
I tell that kid, it's like, it's going to feel 1,000 times better in this seat. And I said that to him so he had something to look forward to. He knows that the feeling's going to get better and better and better. It always gets better and better and better. And that's the beautiful thing about being clean and sober is that, it sucks at first because you don't know how to do it, but as you learn, as you're going through it, the sky's the limit, dude.
Exactly.
Gratitude changes the world. And if you told me that, 15 years ago, I would have laughed you out the fucking room, but after experiencing it, unbelievable, because I dropped that kid off and I go home and I go to bed early and my sleep cycle's messed up. I never go to bed early. And I wake up the next morning and I get out of bed You know, I look at the ceiling, I get out of bed, I go through the shuffle, I'm mixing my coffee with the sugar and the cream, and then I freeze. And I'm like, holy shit. Because it's the first morning I wake up, look at the ceiling, and didn't go, oh, fuck, I got to do all this again. It was the first morning I was like, what's today got for me? I'm 3 years clean and sober at this point. And it took that long for me to have a spiritual experience that helps me realize that I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And not just that these things that these people have taught me, it's not just going to affect how I perceive alcohol and drugs. It's also going to affect my depression.
Oh,
it's going to
without a
affect
doubt.
my disease. It's going to affect my other problems.
Without a doubt.
Today, 8 years after that, the battle with my depression is my frontline fight.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to definitely focus on
And I
when we
want
do
to
the
talk about
lives.
that more. But
Yeah.
if just to wrap this up, I would like to drive home. It's like, yes, the alcohol and the drugs are removed, but the battle still goes on. And it's tough. It's really tough. Alcohol and drugs in my life today, they're side by side with the thought of suicide. They're not associated with anything. I don't think about it when things go tough, like the mental obsession has been relieved, and it's a blessing to do that. And today I try and give that to as many people as I can, on a regular basis, because it helps relieve that, and it helps the depression. And now it's like, I work with professionals. I do a lot of volunteer work. The Fellowship Center at Danbury, it's a not-for-profit. It runs, it rents space to 12-step programs, all of the 12-step programs. And I'm very heavily involved with them. I have been for the last 3 years. They just made me their vice president of the board. And, we try and get a few events going. September 14th. I don't know when this is going to air.
Yeah, I'm not sure on that either, but
yeah, if it's before September 14th, come hang out with us. We're going to do a motorcycle rally. It's from 1 to 5 on September 14th at the Danbury Fellowship Center. That's 15 Great Pasture Road, Danbury, Connecticut. That's our next big event, and it's going to be cool. It's going to be food. There's going to be shirts. There's going to be a lot associated with motorcycles. There's going to be a lot associated for recovery. It's called Rally for Recovery. So we got C-Car coming down. We got a couple mental health locations coming by with the booth. We're going to have a band or a music group. We got a bunch of sponsors. It's actually shaping up to be really, really beautiful that day. So bring your bike and come check it out. If not, next year, this is our first annual. So save the date in September next year, right? And the Danbury Fellowship Center has always been there for me. So it was a matter of just giving back. And I think that's a not-for-profit that I'm really invested in. I've done work with a few others, but that's the one where I relate the most to it, and I'm very passionate about the work we do. And we do very great work on very, very low budget. Man.
Well, I tell you, just talking with you and other people, thank you so much, for, first of all, taking care of Barry. And then, of course, everyone else that you're helping with, and like I said, we're out there. We're gonna wrap up with the information so we can continue with the lives in Detroit. We'll take care of all that. But cool. Again, thank you for just touching the tip of the iceberg here of what's going on. There's definitely a lot more. Well, we will get into that, like I said, more on the live show. We're going to be able to separate the two and dive into them on more detail. But I definitely want to thank you for coming on and sharing, a lot of this stuff. You're going to open a lot of people's eyes. And, like I always tell people, man, someone's going to hear something, one part of this, maybe all of it, and know that there's hope. So,
right.
Barry, thank you so much. Barry Smith, appreciate you. And be looking for this, and we'll be going over more details with our Detroit studio.
Can't wait to continue the story. Give you the rest of the details.
All right.
Thanks for having me, Manny.
Oh, you got it, brother. So you guys look for Barry, and we will be going over more details with our studio in Detroit, a little more details with the separation with the mental health issues and addiction, and how you both intertwined as well. So we're going to dive deeper into that as well. So, Barry, you have a great rest of the day, and thank you for all you're doing, and the rest of the members of the membership there, and you're doing amazing things for the community. So, you guys, thank you very much for taking part of this, and my fight, our war, and always remember, keep fighting a good fight.